All right, so the big claim then, he says, so the conclusion for which that he wants to argue is this. If naturalism, that is, that nature is all there is, right? There's no supernatural and therefore there's no God, that kind of stuff. If naturalism is true, then there is no morality. Right? Notice this is a conditional statement, an if-then statement. That's conditional, right? I'm only arguing that naturalism implies that there are no moral standards, no moral obligations, no right or wrong, no evil or good. Notice that the converse of this conclusion is that if there is such a thing as morality, then naturalism is false, right? And of course, if naturalism is false, then theism is true, because more than nature exists, right? More than the natural world exists, right? He says that theism is necessary for morality, and that's really what he wants to get at throughout this next whole section of the rest of the book, right? Theism,
it really is the only way to ground those claims.
That theism allows for an ought or a should to exist, right? And atheism. He says, I won't be explicitly arguing that there is, in fact, such a thing as morality, although I very strongly believe there is. Nor will I argue for the thesis that naturalism is false, and therefore I won't be arguing for the conclusion that God exists. These will be left as exercises for the reader, right? So if it's true that God exists is required for morality, then there are two paths for the naturalist to take, right? So if God's existence is required for morality, then, and you're a naturalist, right? That is, you don't believe in God, that nature is all there is. He says there's only two paths for you to take. One is to concede that there is such a thing as morality, and therefore you have to say naturalism is false, right? And so, if morality exists, then naturalism has to be false. That's one. He says not many atheists will take this course. And he says, nor do I expect them to, right? The other path, he says, I think proves to be just as untrodden as the first, right? So the first one is, if you need God for morality and you're an atheist, then you have to say you no longer can be an atheist, right?
But I really want to be an atheist, so I'm clearly not going to take that path.
Right, so that's not the path you're going to take. So the second option then is to maintain that atheism is true and then concede that there is no such thing as morality. Yeah. Those are your options, right? So either either God exists and therefore there is a morality, or God does not exist and therefore there is no morality. Those are your options. And of course, he says a few atheists has ever accepted this particular. Some have tried their best, right? If we're to take Nietzsche and Sartre seriously, or at least common readings of their positions, such thinkers have offered some version of moral skepticism, subjectivism, or nihilism. By the way, he wants to use all of these words when he's talking about these. Right, interchangeably. Interchangeably. He says, but he believes that atheists should, in any case, in the spirit of sober skepticism, he believes that the atheist should be, at the very least, highly suspicious of our traditional views of ethics, right? If you're an atheist, then you have to be skeptical with regard to whether or not our traditional views of ethics are correct. Because ultimately, he's going to say you should believe that there is no should or ought.
Right.
You should believe that there should.
Right? It's in your best interest.
That's right. It's logically consistent to say that there is no should or ought if you're an atheist. Right?
I will say too, this isn't like the theory that like consciousness arose like wetness arises from water. Because if you look at the other two areas of how we know things, through science and logic. So we can't get around science. It's rallying against gravity. You can shake your fist at it all you want, and unless you have some sort of technology that goes against it, then you're kind of stuck at the whim of the universe. And it's also not like you can put down the answer 5 to 2 plus 2 and say, that's what it is from now on. Right. Might makes right. But this is an area where
that's like saying, the 20-story building and walking off, and I don't believe in gravity. Right. I'm going to step off the building, and you actually hit floor 10. So far, so good.
Unless we do live in the Matrix. So this isn't like, the universe kind of just wants us to do this and it's a product of the universe, because we can go against our even most sacred held beliefs if we convince ourselves different. So it's not like shaking your fist at gravity or the answer 4. If you were to say that this is that morality is kind of the product of nature, this is the one area where you can rebel against it and be completely fine.
Yeah.
You might not be fine societally, right, or with in your own internal monologue, but I would say that saying morality arises out of the universe or some portion of it would be inconsistent, at least with what Kant was trying to do with his fork analogy.
And again, I think we have to make the point clear, because oftentimes when this type of argument is trying to be made, people are saying, so are you saying that atheists then are just evil people and they always do wrong and they can't behave good?
Right.
No, we're not talking about behavior.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the ground of morality,
mm-hmm,
right? If indeed what he's trying to argue here is if indeed naturalism is true, then it seems to indicate that there is no morality. Not that that atheists do evil, but there is no evil.
Right.
In fact, there is no good.
Which is why after we kind of got used to presuppositionalism, how we're kind of discussing here, we read Hitchens' God is Not Great. And the very fact that the title of it disproves his own his own sense of worldview, because what is great? Well, great, he means good. He means morally good. But and I forget the name of the movie, but he did a series of debates with Doug Wilson. I think there's a book coming out by the same person. Or no, I'm sorry, there's a second part of that movie coming out by the director. Doug Wilson just kept hammering him of where's your standard? By what standard do you claim that things are good or great or bad, or there's more issues with his book than just that. But at the foundational level, God is not great. According to what standard is what you could come away with asking at every single page that he thinks are his points.
Right.
Yeah.
And so his point then is, he says, when I say there's no morality, I mean that there is no objective morality, no morality that is independent of human beliefs and desires. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's what he's trying to get at here. And so he quotes J.L. Mackie, who is a famous he was authority in terms of morality. He says, we need morality to regulate interpersonal relations, to control some of the ways in which people behave towards one another, often in opposition to contrary inclinations, right? I want the piece of cake and I don't want to share it. Okay, and that's not what he says. But anyway, contrary inclinations. We therefore want our moral judgments to be authoritative for other agents as well as for ourselves. Objective validity would give them the authority required. So clearly everybody wants an objective morality to have that authority to say, don't, take my, whatever.